Rocco about my drum teacher. So they're projects I've done for myself, but I often act and collaborate on other projects.
Well, those are kind of more indie art, STEM films. That kind of reminds me, especially when you talk about Germany. You know those noir films from the late 70s? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
The punk scenes, the
Yeah.
real dark, the real shitty, but they're very personal. Like, you can see that this was done for a friend. It was done because they cared about this person.
Yeah. No, he is interesting in that sense. It's kind of a gritty place, and Hamburg has a real punk rock element to it. And my own history in bands, as a drummer in bands, has kind of given me that indie ethos, call it. And I think that's why I've really grooved with Hamburg, actually, in this city, is that punk rock aspect. And I've tried to take that into my filmmaking.
It's a very different world, because when you look at American culture, it's very straightforward. You have the stereotypical eras, the issues, the problems, the golden age of filmmaking. And the same thing applies with Europe. The difference with Europeans is a lot of the projects, a lot of the indie films, artistic films that came out of Germany, Bulgaria, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, when it was the same country. People know what I'm talking about. It was a very different movement. It was a very, very different movement of, we don't give a shit, we have a Super 8 film and only a motorcycle. That's what we have. We have that and this.
Yeah, exactly. Using the kind of constraints, but also committing to it at the same time. So just, I actually appreciate it when there's kind of it's constraints, but it's very liberal here, and I think that carries across in the art, and that's what actually drew me to Germany. The first time I was Berlin, I tapped into this appreciation for the arts, which I hadn't. Not to kind of bag my hometown, but I'm from Australia, and I found a different appreciation for the arts in Europe. And I was in a band in London and went to Berlin, and my first time kind of in an indie club in Berlin, I really tapped into this appreciation. Like, the crowd, it didn't matter what sort of music was being played.
Right.
The crowd had this genuine appreciation regardless of kind of style. And so I went back to London and told the guys I was with, hey, we should maybe give it a shot in Berlin, because there just seems to be more of an appreciation for the arts there. And it didn't happen with that band, but I was very much drawn to here, and that's how I ended up here.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned this, because there was an English band that most people know of called the Beatles, and they really changed and rose to prominence and really became successful because they played 8 hours in Hamburg.
Mm-hmm.
That is, you want to talk about the workers' cycle of artist industry. It's Germany. It's Hamburg, Germany. That's where it comes from. Many, many, many artists and creators will tell you that's where they got their spark and became incredible instrumentalists, incredible filmmakers, photographers.
Absolutely, and that history is here, and it's present all the time down on the Reeperbahn. Have you been to Hamburg yourself? Or
I haven't been to Germany, but I do have family there, near Hamburg. My connection with Germany is a mixture of family and also the arts, because I'm Jewish. But at the same time, my family never really experienced that side. But at the same time, I had family that lives there. And at the same time, I've been inspired by art in Germany. So I have a very weird position in regards to German culture, because I can't really have an opinion.
Yeah, it's a nuanced area.
Yeah,
But
unless I go there, but I haven't been there,
yeah, you kind of
unfortunately.
have to. It's hard for me to it's hard for me to describe it to people, and when I do, I just speak of it so highly a lot due to the attitude, because the attitude is really up there for me in terms of importance in the in a place that I choose to live. But I mean, I have a son here. He's my primary reason for being here. But the arts thing and the liberalness and the Reeperbahn here, where you sense the Beatles' history, where it's all around you, the little indie rock and roll clubs. I mean, when I first came here 10 years ago, I was seeing bands on the Reeperbahn, to 10 people that then became massive, like the 1975 stuff. I saw those guys with like 10 people standing there, and I kind of thought, yes, that's quite common. That happens here. You see a little band down there, and next thing you know, they're kind of touring the world.
Yeah, it's a different worldview. It's a different perspective in many regards. You say liberal. The thing that I have experienced, especially with German cultures, it's not American liberal.
No, that's an important fact, actually. That's an important point. Yeah, I'm using that.
Because American liberals, in my opinion, are extremist. They're crazy. And many times are mentally ill. The difference is when you go to a place like Germany, it's what you would have thought liberalism was before Ronald Reagan was president.
Yeah, I'm talking about a free. Yeah, I'm talking
Yeah.
about a free. I'm talking about a free spirited appreciation and acceptance. So, when I first came here, I'd be in a bar and I'd be chatting to someone who's like an accountant. They'd say, "What are you doing?" I'd say, "I'm an artist." And I realized pretty quick that I kind of had my guard up, but I realized pretty quick there was just like this level of acceptance. That's what I mean by liberal freedom of expression as well, which kind of contradicts a lot of what people think Germany is. The stereotypical, a lot of rules, that type of thing. For me, there is a freedom here if you act responsibly. You're treated like an adult, and people respect that. You can drink on the street. Where I'm from in Australia, like there's a lot of regulation, a lot of rules, but we're supposed to be kind of the lucky country, kind of free-spirited land, but it's actually very regulated. And then I come to Germany and like I can drink on the street and there's not even like security in clubs. And I haven't, in my entire 10 years being here, I've seen very little aggression in those type of environments, whereas Australia, there was a lot of fights in clubs and stuff. So sort of just made me realize, like, treat people like adults, give them the responsibility, and they respect it.
I once heard a story from a Holocaust survivor. He grew up in Berlin, and he didn't go. He had a really, to make this long story short, he was a musician. And he escaped the war. He got caught, and he came back, and he survived. He died, I think 6 or 7 years ago. And he said, "Why do you think all of the world's greatest leaders, designers, artists, automobile creators, why do they all come from Germany?" And he says, "Mine eine." He says, like, from my own eyes, I could see why. And the thing is, as an artist, when you're surrounded by other artists, like you said, you can't explain it unless you're there. Because when you're surrounded by these people and you're talking to them, you're like, oh my God, who are these people? Where have you been my whole life?
Yeah, it feels like you've kind of, that feeling of finding your community in a way. I mean, it first happened when I first came to Europe. Like the first city I hit was Florence in Italy, and it was the first time I was like overwhelmed by architecture. I studied architecture, worked in architecture before being in bands and stuff, but I arrived in Florence and I was standing in front of the Duomo, and
Oh my
just in
God.
awe of this like crazy architecture. And then I noticed on the pediment on the top that the artists sat above the gods. And that was kind of a big moment for me because I had essentially come to Europe to like pursue art initially with music, and then to see this position, I was like, okay, that's a huge, that's literally putting artists on a massive pedestal. So that was like my first experience.
You wanna mind fuck right now? Think about all of the cultures, going to Hancock's theory of, civilization ending about 12,000 to 11,800 years ago. But there are stone carving pillars, temples that were designed by artists. Architects are artists. Team architects, you're on our team. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you out of this. But it's true. These are ways of us remembering our past, and they only exist because artists created them.
Spot on, yeah.
Don't get rid of us. Trust me. You want us to exist, because the thing is, without artists, there is no recorded history. There is no remembrance, film, photography. All that's gone. If we don't exist, it's crazy.
For sure.
What do you have to say to that? Like, when you've been to a place where you see, just crazy to see artists above gods, it makes you wonder to yourself that maybe you're the elephant that's in the circus and told to be in control when you're the biggest thing that's in there.
That's a big statement, man. I love it.
Listen, bro, somebody's got to say it. It kind of like points you at the finger, like you're the one that has all of the control. So why am I being told that I can't do it?
I think you have to give yourself permission as well. I think, that's the creative struggle, right? Is like, not only is there environments around you that might be constrictive, but also like your own self-doubt or but when you arrive, like for me, when I arrived in that place, it was so significant because it was like, here you are respected.
European culture is very different. Very hard for Americans to understand unless they've experienced it. Like, I lived in Israel for 4 years, and I was surrounded by Europeans, Germans, Hungarians, people that were from Croatia and Turkey, and their understanding of Queen. I'm going to give this as an example. I remember once I was with somebody who was from Germany, and I was playing Queen, and their experience with Queen, and I was like, wait, so you mean to tell me the first time you heard Queen was "I Want to Break Free" in a cellar, like 40 kilometers away from your house, and it was abandoned? And you guys just brought a keg with you? They're like, yeah. And you just drank hard liquor the whole night in this abandoned cellar, 40. And they were like, yeah, this is. And I'm just like so fascinated. Like, can you imagine you as a filmmaker? Like, I would go film that. It's an incredible movie right there. But to them, that's a normal spring break. Yeah,
it's normal. Yeah, it's interesting you say it because, like, when I first came here to Hamburg and was in a band here, we were rehearsing in an above ground bunker. So,
that's fun.
Yeah, first of all, I didn't even realize like above ground bunkers existed. I always thought they were underground, but there's obviously a number of them here, and they literally have like 3 meter thick concrete walls, and some of them are too expensive to knock down. So what better place to change the use of it than to a place where bands can just smash
the acoustics, bro. The acoustics in those,
yeah.
Next level.
So for me, it was like, wow, I'm here and I'm like jamming in an above ground bunker, and then like it actually, like just like you've said, that started to become normal. was just like, all right, I'm off to the bunker to practice. Whereas in Australia, I was in studios and stuff, but in London, it was pretty cool because I was rehearsing under an off license in Brick Lane, which is Electric Avenue in Brixton, which is
Okay.
in the song like Walk On Through to Electric Avenue, and there was a bottle shop kiosk, and our practice space was underneath that in
Wow.
cold, rainy London, and then transport to Germany, and practice space is above ground concrete bunker. So it's like, well, what better environments to like experiment with rock?
Well, it's also about creating, I wouldn't say a perfect environment, but the right ambiance of a room, because there is a reason why orchestra podiums are designed the way that they are. There's the reason why stadiums are designed the way that they are. And I don't know, I feel like when you're practicing and you're with a band, and if you're not in the right like ambiance, it's sometimes much harder to get into that flow that you want to.
For sure. That being said, like this second concrete bunker we were in was fucked. Like the wiring was shot. There was like they had to shut it down because it was like it was a complete. Someone was going to get electrocuted. Like it was.
It was bad.
It was bad. It got really bad.
Yeah, somebody hired their uncle to come over and do the electrical work.
It was in the bunker. But you're right. You need a certain type of space. And I always said the best music has come out of, like, in my opinion, like Northern England, Stone Roses, Oasis,
Manchester, Liverpool.
and the Manchester, like when it's dreary, cold, and there's not much to do but get in a garage and like play fucking instruments and create some of the biggest albums in history. It comes from that. That's why, as much as the winter kills me, not to talk about the weather, but as much as the heavy winters here kill me, I find it a very creative time. It harnesses creativity to have these seasons,
It's weird because you come from Australia, which from what I was told, your seasons are backwards. So like the summer is in January, is that true?
Yeah. So our Christmas is hot as fuck, and fake snow melting on the beach. We have barbecues on the beach with like fake Santas and shit, and it all melts in the 38-degree heat. So yeah.
What the fuck? Like, what the fuck? That's not Christmas. That's some kind of bullshit shit you do in Miami, okay? And like downtown little Cuba, like you just have a little barbecue and like, oh, say lo feliz, like this is Christmas. Like, no.
But being in Germany, the Christmas markets are amazing in December. So that's what I mean. Like Australian culture, German culture are like polar opposites, man, in so many ways. We're sarcastic. We have a dry sense of humor. Germany, there's no sarcasm.
No,
zero sarcasm.
No humor. And I remember I had a friend of mine, his name was Mark, when I was in Israel. I made a joke. The amount of silence, like we were a group of like 25, we went silent in a matter of seconds. The joke was, I was like, nice pants, you make it any tighter, women are going to notice your banana. And he looked at me and he's like, what? And just pure silence. I was like, okay. Yep.
Well, welcome to my daily life, man. I've had more long silences here than I've had hot dinners. Like, just one, because you're navigating the language, but two, if you have this kind of sarcasm, it just doesn't float.
It also, first of all, my mom speaks Yiddish, and surprisingly, I can read a bit of German and understand it to a certain degree. The German language itself is very direct. It's a very direct language. So when you try to be funny in German, Hey, it's Dave, and I quickly just wanted to jump in and say if you've been enjoying the podcast and enjoying this episode, if you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that'll be so greatly appreciated. Because here's the thing, someone might read that review and make the choice if they want to listen to the podcast. You get to help grow this podcast with us. How fucking cool is that? Let's jump back to today's episode. I don't know how to explain.
It's as cold as a concrete bunker.
Exactly.
And but on the literalness thing, the directness thing, I've actually learned to appreciate it. At first, it took me a while to get a bit of a thick skin because they do shoot from the hip here. But actually, it often saves a lot of fucking round. And the thing is, you know where you stand a lot. So in Australia, it's awesome, right? Because we're open and friendly, and that's its own thing. That's cool. Like who wouldn't want to live somewhere that's just open and friendly? But here, a lot of German male friends and stuff, they won't say something unless they truly mean it. And I've had people, you know, I was struggling to get an apartment here early on. I was really battling to like with the living situation, and there was a guy at a party, and I told him that I was trying to get, you know, an apartment, and he's like, "Oh, hey man, I've got some contacts. I'd never met him before." He's like, I'll follow you up. Might take me some time, but I was like, yeah, cool. I didn't expect to hear from him, and then literally 3 weeks later, here's the contacts. I told you I'd send them, and he just wouldn't have said it if he wasn't going to do it. So I've really actually learned to appreciate the literalness and the directness, because it saves a lot of fucking about sometimes. But at the same time, I miss the kind of open friendliness thing. So
I feel, especially Americans, German people are very misunderstood and very misjudged in American culture. And the reason is, you know, the jokes of like, oh, all they do is eat beer, drink beer and eat meat, you know, and scream at each other, you know, and drive Mercedes cars on, you know, the Autobahn and go over 200. I have never been to the country, but thankfully I've been able to meet people that are from there. This is just the way I've seen it. Every single person you meet that come from different areas of Germany will tell you like their different foods, what was it like for them as a kid, how crazy their winters were. But it's all different. They're all Germans, but they're all different. They all have different music and different stories and different movies that they loved. And you get to realize, yes, it's different, but it's a country of different types of Germans. Not just Germans, it's different types of Germans.
There's a real progressiveness in the youth, actually. Every time I chat to like guys coming out of school and stuff, there's a real progressive awareness. I've got a lot of faith in the youth, and a lot of that comes down to the education here. Also, a big factor here is like education being free. Like that's a massive one to me. I come from a country where like you come out of university in massive amounts of debt. Same in Britain, America, and here they firmly believe that anybody should have the right to a free education.
But that comes at a cost, though. You know that. A very heavy cost, because what that means is you pay more in taxes.
Yeah. Taxes here are heavy. But when I see kids coming out of university and they're like not in debt, I think they come into the labor force strong as opposed to coming into it like chasing their tail. But there's plenty of criticisms I have too. Like nowhere's perfect, right? And there's a lot of bureaucracy here. There's so much paperwork and bureaucracy, and it's like rocket science. And when you don't understand the language, it adds a whole. It's heavy. It's really heavy.
The biggest problem is, and I don't like getting political, is the EU. It really is. They are stubborn, old-fashioned, close-minded, and bigots. Every last one of them, because they don't want to understand that the youth are not fragile little, insects that are going to break into a million pieces. Just, any American, just listen to EU chairmen talk about the biggest issues right now that's going on. I don't understand it. I don't understand why there is this constant push of like, we need to protect them. What are you protecting them for? Exactly. What are you doing? I mean, you tell
Yeah.
me. You're around youth all the time in Germany.
Yeah, the politics, man. I try to I'm just
It gets at
I
you, though. It does.
yeah. I had issues here because I had a British passport, which was giving me my rights here, especially with family and my son. And then when Brexit, the shit hit the fan, and it all got a bit worrisome here in terms of my rights and stuff. So yeah, I don't I don't know. I don't know. Again, it's attitude to me over kind of that back to that liberal thing. Not to use the word liberal, but back to that. It's kind of that's big for me. I try to stay out of the political shit show.
I don't try either. The biggest issue is when it comes face to face in front of you, and it starts to affect artists' work and career and threatens us as to what we are allowed to do. Because here's the thing: in order for us to create, we're going to keep on making what we need to, do, because that's what we love to do, and that's who we are as people. But then when you get silenced because they don't like what you're saying, that gets personal. I don't care about politics. Just don't come at my face and tell me what to do.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing in Germany, there is a lot of funding for the arts. In Australia, not so much. So, yeah, I've been able to live a life here in Germany which has balanced my artistic life, my family life, which I just wouldn't have been able to do where I'm from. So I'm pretty grateful for that, to have been able to balance an artistic life here.
When did you start? When you started your filmmaking career in Germany, why did you start your career there out of all places?
It's a good question. I had grown up around film. My father's a filmmaker. I'd done some workshops and things when I was a kid, and I always had that. I grew up on sets, so sets were a comfortable place for me. There was a documentary about my football team when I was 16 that my dad made, and I just found sets to be a really comfortable place. But then all through my 20s, I was in rock bands and kind of moving back and forth, London, Australia, and so on. So when I finally settled in Germany, I was like, now I'm going to go back to my kind of childhood dreams and start pursuing primarily acting. And I was initially, it's a contradiction, because I was in this place that I'd tapped into this artistic vibe, but I was an Aussie in Germany trying to suddenly pursue an acting career. People just told me to my face I was insane. They were like, it's hard enough as it is if I was in LA or wherever, but here was this Aussie in Germany, and it kind of made me more determined. When people literally told me that I had zero chance, I was like, well, it's not zero chance if I take it into my own hands as best I can and just make stuff. And so then I found here was a place that I could do that cheaply, locations, without permits and shooting stuff. And then I got a couple of projects that, acting jobs and stuff that showed me that I could actually do it, and that I was finding opportunities here that wouldn't have presented in other countries. So a whole heap of trial and error, but I started to embrace my unique thing, which was that I was completely a fish out of water. It's like, well, if I'm the only Aussie in town, perhaps that's kind of a unique thing and I should embrace that. But it was fucking crazy. I was going for auditions in German and I had barely any German. It was kind of bold to throw myself in, but a little bit stupid at the same time, thinking that I was going to land these auditions. So a whole heap of trial and error and a lot of like extra work and stuff. So it's taken me 10 years to really come back to like taking it into my own hands and just making the stuff that's important to me and collaborating on cool stories with cool people who are trying to say something as opposed to just making something that's not really trying to say anything.
So you basically at this point are an independent filmmaker. So you call the shots. And
well, I mean, I write and develop a lot, but getting the stuff made, I'm trying to collaborate as much as possible. I'm collaborating with some other really cool filmmakers, primarily on a lot of shorts. But I feel so much better now taking on less. Like if I tell 1 or 2 stories a year that are important to me, that are personal, that are trying to say something, I'm happy with that. Whereas my early time here, I was going for everything. I was going for commercials and being an extra on all this stuff. And, I've just realized it's so much better to do like 1 or 2 or have a swing at 1 or 2 cool projects as opposed to like doing 30 or 40 shitty things that don't get me anywhere and I don't learn or grow from any of it.
Yeah, it's all about having like a learning experience and not burning out.
Completely, man. Perseverance. But like I say, that this is impossible has actually driven me to like, to just try and take it into my own hands as much as possible. It's like anything's possible. It really doesn't matter where you are as an artist. You can just make the stuff. It's all about the doing,
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I live down here in South Florida. I'm originally from New York, and I still do the podcast. I still do my artistic things. I still keep in contact with the people that I talk with and still make interactions. The thing is, you're right. It's not about where you live. It's about you as an artist making the steps to be a more successful version of yourself.
Bang on.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be what anybody wants it to be.
And for a long time I thought, because I'm in Hamburg, I have to like fit into whatever here. But then it was like, well, no, actually, you can kind of be a global artist separate to where you live. You don't have to try and just fit into the. So I was very much trying to fit into the like. I have to go for German projects, and it was just really, again, really unique because I just had what the fuck moments like on sets of like German crime TV and being directed in German and like barely being able to speak it, and it actually helped me because I couldn't understand what was going on. I had to really like focus and be as present as possible.
Oh my God.
But it was scary as fuck because you're on a set and you like, these were big sets. I mean, it's very small roles, but big sets. And everyone's question was always like, did you have dialogue? Because their heads would spin. They're like, why is anybody going to cast a guy who can barely speak the language? And most of the time I didn't have dialogue. I was a drug pusher or just doing like drug deals on a crime show. And so it was kind of awesome just to be in this have these moments. Like it was real spin out. Here I am as an Aussie on a German TV production.
Oh God. Well, something, the bright side of this is that you didn't decide to move to Japan. Because if you move to Japan, be a little different.
I love Japan, man. And a samurai crew from Japan came here, and I did like a cinematic sword workshop and short film with them, and that was an awesome experience.
Oh my god, that is.
Yeah,
I love Japanese culture. First off,
yeah.
like I've been obsessed since I was a kid. You know, I used to go to the library. And used to if anybody doesn't know what a library is, okay, because you haven't been to one, it's a place where you take out books. Okay, you go to this place and it's filled with these papers with these covers. Yeah, crazy. And I used to take out all these manga books, and I just all the time just bring them back, come back, bring them back, and just reading over and over again. That is just so cool, like especially like their traditional culture, like with kimonos and swords and samurais.
Mm.
God, we could talk about this for like 6 hours.
Yeah, seriously, a huge fan. Huge fan of. I haven't been there, but like samurai. I mean, I've practiced martial arts, but like Japanese film design,
Ooh, yes.
samurai culture, all of it. It's just like I just
Music.
love it. Music, all of
Ooh.
it. I do see some similarities between Germany and Japan, which people find a bit hard to fathom sometimes. But this kind of repressed, orderly thing followed by like going crazy karaoke at night. Like, I do see some links, but in terms of the efficiency, you know,
It's a language.
yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I've heard this before, and I think it's because if I don't know that much Japanese, I can understand to a certain extent also, but I can kind of read also. This is what happens when you have too much manga. The attitude and the insult. But with the languages, with Japan, it's a very direct language. You have to know how to put words together. You have to know how to write them. You have to know who you're addressing and how you're speaking to the person. Germany is the same way. How do I know this? Well, they all have different dialects. Ta-da! Yes, this is true. Germany is full dialects because people are like, no, we say it better. No, we say it like that. No, we say it like this. So I think that's
a good point.
Yeah, I think it's the language.
Yeah, the crazy thing here in Germany is, you know, you this whether you're addressing somebody formally or informally, you know. So it's a bit more cruisy these days, but generally, like if it's professional or someone you don't know or an older person, you're addressing them formally, but it changes the whole fucking grammar structure as opposed to if you're informally addressing them. So I would meet someone in my early time here, and by the time I'd figured out whether it was formal or informal, like the conversation was over and gone. Like it just stunted me, you know, from even getting started. But you're right. I think that type of language, there's parallels there.
And can we also say this, because it's a fact? The two greatest industries on the planet that have come out of these countries is the automobile industry, such as Porsche, Mercedes, Audi, and BMW. And then you have Japan with Nikon, Canon, Sony, these insane electronics such as cameras for videographers, cinematographers. I mean, the list just goes on. Germany and Japan.
Efficiency, like real work ethic, like hard working. I think in Japan, like in Suzuki, they knock off work at like 5:37, like to the minute, and all the seating is in like a hierarchy type thing.
Oh God. Well, you know, it's funny because I mentioned cars. I never would want to buy a German car because I'd always be afraid of breaking it, because I did own one. And I love Toyota cars, but they're too boring. You know, it's like you have these great cultures, but they tend to do things that, especially for me as an American, I'm like, nah.
So
Yeah.
what's your favorite? What's your classic?
Um, my my favorite car brand. My favorite car brand is Volkswagen.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, I love their. My favorite is their camper. My favorite would be like the
I got
70,
I got a
7070.
I got
Yeah.
a bit of a crazy Volkswagen story. I'll keep it short.
Ooh, no, don't you?
Well,
Come on, go. I want to hear this.
well, this was actually my first kind of big job here in Germany. Like, it was a Volkswagen commercial, and it was it
Ooh.
was actually an amazing experience. One, because I just, as I keep saying, I'd been told I had no chance, and they were actually looking for a couple of international guys, and sort of, it was like, you got it, no, you haven't got it, you got it, and then all of a sudden I got it and was being like whisked off to like German countryside for 3 days,
Oh
and it was
wow.
a big, on these commercials, big productions, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
talking like
This is
stadium,
Volkswagen. Like
yeah, and I was
big.
pretty, I'd trained in acting and stuff, but this was my first sort of real deal job, and we get out to this countryside, and there's like stadium lights, and there's just a stream of cars coming to the set, and I'm just like, who are all these? Why? And they're like, well, the agent's got to be here, Volkswagen's here, the crew, the production company, the everyone, and I was just like, holy! So it was just me and the other guy, and it was quite, the initial scenes and stuff were quite nerve wracking, but the director was an absolute legend. And once we got into it, we had this amazing 3 days going around in this old school little GTI.
My
Like,
God.
go, and
No way.
we would just go from one location to the next. Like, we'd go from a lake where we would like a boat, and then we would go to like a graduation scene, and then we would go, and we would just, me and Val, the other guy, and the American guy, we were just having an absolute ball. And at the same time, I was realizing like, hey, I could do this. I can carry my own on a big set. And it was a really amazing experience. And I was kind of, these 3 days was kind of like I had been off on an island somewhere. Like, I didn't know what was going on back in reality. And I got back to Hamburg, and I messaged a couple of people. I was like, just been doing this Volkswagen shoot, pretty like chuffed. It was a good experience. And they're like, Volkswagen, ha ha ha. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they're like, have you seen the news? The first day of shooting was when the VW scandal happened,
Mm-hmm.
the emissions scandal. We were unaware on the set that this was going on.
Oh my God.
That Volkswagen was basically, rightly so, being chastised in the media for tampering with emissions on their cars, particularly America. America was pretty pissed at Volkswagen, right? So I get back, and it's all over the news. Volkswagen is like kind of evil. And I went into a spin. I was like, well, one, I don't know if this commercial's ever going to see the light of day. And this is kind of maybe my foot in the door here in Germany. And I thought it, for a commercial, I thought it was a really good concept as far as that type of stuff goes. So I was freaking out. And then I was like, well, secondly, do I want to represent, like, morally, do I want to represent a company that is now like being vilified all over the world? I was like, do I want to have my face associated with that? I was spitting out, man. I had to call my dad, and he was like, he just didn't know what was going on and stuff. Anyway, I heard donuts. I heard nothing for months. And about 3 or 4 months later, I just literally had to sit there and accept that it just wasn't going to happen, that it just wasn't going to come out. And I let go of it. I was like, that's the nature of the business, right? That's how it goes. But I was clinging to it a bit just because it was Germany, and it was such a rare chance. Anyway, the next day it came out, and they were like, we just had to, like, everything had shut down. But they were like, we just had to like push it through because it was cool. But to finish, we were ripping donuts in this GTI, and we were giving the car like a fair bit of a hiding. And then we got out the car, and we were like, is that is that cool? And they're like, well, as long as it goes back to the Volkswagen Museum in one piece. So they'd actually got it from the museum.
Oh my
And we
God.
were given this thing like an absolute thrashing. But I had a ball, and it was just like we had lunch in a castle, and it was an amazing experience. And I just, again, when I'm old, sitting at the bar, I'll be able to look back on those 3 days of just like doing what I love in a foreign country, and yeah, that's the Volkswagen experience.
Oh my God, it is. And the way I look at car companies is like this. You can look at the corporate end of it, but you can also look at it from the designers, the people that design these cars, the engineers, the ones that figured out the right suspension, the right engine, the right transmission to put into a car. I like learning from people. So these people that make these cars, when you talk with them, they're the coolest people you ever meet. They are the company. That is a fact. Without them, there is no cars. And as much as the corporate end of those companies think that, time and time again, whenever they had shitty artists and shitty engineers, what has happened? They go bankrupt.
Comes back to the art, comes back to what we were saying earlier. Full
Yes.
circle, man.
Artists on top of gods. I'm telling you, this is fact.
Full circle. It really does. No, yeah. Yeah, I'm fascinated.
That is such a cool fucking experience. Like, being able to drive this historic car, for 3 days. And I mean, that's cool that it was a museum car. That thing's probably never going to be driven ever again. So at least you had fun.
It's not in a superficial way at all. It was the experience. Like, even if it did come out, like I had made peace with like the just that experience as a thing. It was just really, really unique. And I realized that was rare actually. And the director was a legend, but there was so much stuff that just happened in those 3 days. It was yeah, I'll never forget it really.
You never do. You never expect yourself to lose those experiences because, like you said, as we get older, those experiences become memories. And there's something to look back at. Having a past is not a bad thing. It's something to look forward to in the future. You being able to say, like, look what I've been able to do. Like, look what I've been able to accomplish for myself. And that only happens when you're willing to take those opportunities and make those happen.
Yeah. And yeah, without getting too philosophical, it's like,
sorry.
No, I'm saying me. No, apologies.
I'm already going down there very deep.
I'm saying like being the old guy at the German Kneipe, if I'm still here in, the German Kneipe is like an old person bar. Yeah, I think there'll be less, I just hope there's less regret when it's like you've got this memory bank full of these experiences that we're talking about. Not to live in the past, but just to like know that you had a crack and it didn't necessarily always go how you thought it was going to, but you had these unique and like wonderful experiences, exactly as you've said, because you put yourself in that realm.
Right. And being realistic with yourself, being able to, you said it, you came to another country and people were telling you this is impossible. What the hell are you doing? Putting yourself in this new reality, this new world, creating something for yourself. Yes, fucking up along the way. Guess what? We do that sometimes. That's just a fact of life. But because you made those choices and decisions, again, it's not going back into the past, but it's you making those stepping stones for the future. Again, you have to learn on how to be able to see that perspective and be able to see both sides.
Perspective is key.
Yes.
I've got a dear friend in Australia. Shout out to Darian. He's a big man on perspective. We often talk about perspective. It's a thing.
I got fascinated by perspective because of David Bowie.
Mm.
He used to talk a lot about of seeing different sides of yourself, you know, being able to see a perspective from a different scope, which is another great thing for artists because it really gets you pumping, gets you moving, and being able to learn from another person that's in front of you.
What a phenomenal guy in terms of being like a multifaceted. He threw himself into everything, you know, everything. Like talk about like, you know, I've heard in LA in the past, like if you did too many things, it was like, I don't know, I've never been, but it's like you called a slasher, right? Because you're something slash something slash something. But I've learned to kind of embrace the multifaceted artist thing. And David Bowie was just like, if he was a slashy, there was like 50 things, and that's just like phenomenal, you know.
He was a different type of creator, and I think the lesson that he tried to teach is the same one that you've been doing for yourself for the past decade, which is if you don't try and you don't accept the fuckery, you can't succeed.
Fuckery's the word. I love it.
Listen, he lived on bell peppers and milk throughout the 70s. I'm not kidding.
What a combo.
Yeah, that was all he ate for 10 years. All right. He's the one you should be listening to.
Yeah, it's quite the combo. Bell peppers and milk. Yeah.
Oh, and cocaine. That was the other one. Cocaine.
tweaking the dials, right?
Have you ever seen him? I've seen the film of him performing like in the early 70s, like 72, 73, as Ziggy Stardust. And it is just like, bro, do you need me to get you a fan? You need me to cool you off? Are you okay? But the fact that existed in the 1970s, just like, what? What? How did that happen? Like, no way. Crazy.
Yeah. Definition of enigma, man, like a whole thing. Yeah.
But you find that with a path of learning to be able to learn from other people and teach you different things, like running into a person, they're like, yeah, I'll find you an apartment. Just give me a couple of weeks. You know, you run into a person like, oh, yeah, I know a story. If you go down there, there's a guy there. He's a DJ. You should definitely talk to him. And you go to him and he says like, oh, yeah. I know somebody there. You go to his Instagram account, you can find. It goes on and on and on. You know, it's just.
It's crazy. It's crazy, yeah, how certain people present at the right time or opportunities, and then you kind of anticipate or create a scenario in your own head how it's going to go, and of course it never ends up like that, but it always teaches you something. Another thing here was I have this architecture background, and it's like my fallback, but I had made a strong commitment to never work in the industry again. But it was kind of a double-edged sword because my qualification was always tugging at me when things are tough. And a few years ago, I did what I really didn't want to have to do. I had to look for an architecture job because there's no fucking around here, right? Especially with the sun and so on. It was like I'd been pushing creatively, and it was just complete crickets, nothing happening. And so I did what I really didn't want to do. I got on a normal job site to look for an architecture
I'm
job.
sorry.
No, and I sunk, right? I it crushed me. And anyway, my normal kind of day was to look for castings and kind of film work related stuff. I never went on English job sites. The only reason I went on the English job site was because I was having to go for architecture work. And then on this English job site was a film project. And so I inquired about it, and I ended up getting a lead role in this indie film from essentially going on an English job site to try and find an architecture job.
Oh my God, that's
It was
so
a crazy
random.
twist. So when I got that, I like I'm saying, I was like, wow, this is like must be kind of the break, because I was kind of desperate, and I was falling back on my thing. And of course, that shoot turned out to be a whole different experience to what I kind of hoped and anticipated, but it taught me like so much. So it's just crazy. It's like you say, it's so random. It's like I hadn't been on an English job site, and then I go on there looking for the fallback job, and then there's a film job on there. It's like, okay. Random.
No, it's so true. It's where the universe, the world that we live in, if you go with the flow, my dude, if you learn to be less angry and more disciplined, but at the same time realize it's okay to fuck up. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be wrong sometimes.
Yeah, and trust is a tough, to trust. That's a struggle sometimes. It's like you got to be like proactive, but just trust that you're exactly where you're meant to be. That's the big thing is just like, but as you say, just fucking go with the flow. Try not to pull. I've had times where I've just gripped at it too tightly, and when you're gripping really tightly, it's you just gotta fucking lock, as they say, lock her up here, loosen up.
Gotta get up from your bootstraps.
Yeah.
It's hard though.
Yeah, trusting is hard. That's my point. But
it's more I had a conversation with somebody the other day about this. Is for me, trust is not the only thing that I expect out of a person, but it is such a pillar. Because when you can't be honest with somebody, straightforward, you can't tell them how you feel, why are you friends with them? And
if trust goes, I think that's the foundation is gone. Like you can try and rebuild that, but I think trust is like a real pillar of a foundation in any relationship. Trust and respect. If there's no trust or respect, like you don't have a lot to kind of go with there.
No, it's like basically cutting off life support. You can't. The thing is, maybe you can be a solid artist. Sorry, and alone, and doing everything by yourself, which I feel I do a lot of the times. But I do find inspiration. I do find creativity and something to learn from other people, such as yourself, for example. But I don't know, I feel like you can't expect it to come, it's like, wishing for the star to come across the sky. You're like, please. No, that's not how the world works, honey. It just happens.
It's the old, the cavalry ain't coming. I like that statement. It's been used by Mark Duplass, awesome indie, renowned filmmaker now. But the chariot ain't coming. Like it's not coming to sweep us away. That's why. But it's taken me so long to like really go at that fiercely, take it into my own hands and not wait for that charity. Anything that I'm offered or a collaboration is awesome, but at the core of it, I think I'm like you in that I try and do a lot on my own, and I try and lift everything by myself sometimes, and I love to do it, but together and like collaboratively, we can really feed off each other and put a spark to ideas collectively, as opposed to I think I get caught sometimes in just trying to do everything.
We're all about the artist. That is the whole purpose of this podcast, period. And you have a really valuable tool. You can share this with artists, people that are creative, someone that can enjoy this podcast and really enjoy the experience of Lost in the Groove. So with that, let's jump back to today's episode, shall we? And to add to your point, having trust and respect with people, having those pillars is sometimes, and I'm not trying to put this on all artists, but sometimes I feel it's hard to have, not only with just with artists, but I feel with a variety of different type of people, of just not being able to open yourself up. I know it's scary, but the thing is, if you want somebody to be there for you just as much as you want them vice versa, to be there for both of yourselves, you need to be open with the person. You need to be honest. You need to connect with that person.
Honesty is key, man. It really is.
It changes people.
Yeah. Honesty and vulnerability. People don't like to be hoodwinked. We all have a bullshit radar, and people don't we don't like it when we feel like we're being. I'm just a big advocate for intuition and instinct, trying to tune into the intuitive side of things. I'm always going on about it.
How do you do that for yourself?
Well, I trained it in martial arts like a muscle. And I sort of have taken that concept of treating it almost like a muscle and exercising it. It doesn't make it any easier, but we all have this sense of knowing, and it just proves itself over and over again. Like you said before with the fuckery, it's honestly like you agree to something, and then as soon as you agree to it, you get this vibe. You're like, I've been on this dance floor before.
It's not 1974 anymore, honey.
I've seen this before. I know where this is going, and you just have this vibe, and then it's no surprise when it
happens.
It happens, and you're like, well, fuck! I didn't trust my intuition, did I?
I felt that way many times. And I remember once where I trusted my gut. I had, I'll never forget this. I went, this was up north in Israel. And we were a group. We went on this bus, and it was really nice, and went to this little farm for the weekend. And there was this guy there. And there were a group of my friends there that were all girls. And this guy kept on harassing this. I knew there was something up with this guy. He came onto the bus, and it was just weird. And then he started messing around with her, and I was like, I don't like this. I have to do something. And I felt like I have to do something. So I went up to him, and I let him have. I was like, if you dare and touch her, I swear to God, I will break every bone in your body. And he was like, whoa, you don't have to get harsh, man. I'm like, I'm not getting harsh with you. She said, leave you alone. Leave her alone. So leave her alone. And it's so true. If you sometimes just listen to the little eeny weeny little voices, go for it. Go for it. Trust me.
But good on you for acting. I mean, I guess it's not great to be impulsive, but that's different because you acted on an instinct that this was a shady situation, a shady.
Many people don't react though. Many people don't get involved.
this is what I mean. You actually committed to that, and like you quite possibly evaded like a bad situation there, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I've had some strange. I was in Spain once in a little side street, and a guy like took a woman into like a foyer thing, and
Ooh.
I had this. I had the same vibe, and I did. It was a bit silly what I did, but I did what you did. I followed them in there, and I started like confronting the guy. But ultimately, it was like I had to gauge the woman, and she told me it was okay, and it was like it was a weird situation, but I don't know, like I kind of had to let it go. But it was like just a similar thing. I was just trying to react on a vibe, but bringing like intuition into life decisions and stuff that's you're trying to get your head around and trying to listen to that. It's hard. It's really hard. We get so distracted by like crazy shit in it. But
You want to think so funny? I am one of those very few people that are on my phone while I'm driving. Isn't that crazy? Amazing.
not ideal.
It's very normal here in South Florida. Everybody's on
Oh
their
Jesus.
phones. Yeah, it's bad. And just looking around and noticing how everybody is so disconnected, it's like,
Mm.
no wonder why there's so many accidents. You know, it's very weird to be around now because people have this sorry, they have disconnect constantly. They are unable to like talk and have a conversation like we've been doing because you're constantly on your phone. You're constantly on computers and electronics. Like we've been talking here. I have no phone in front of me. Like you are my direct right
and
now.
it, and this is even through a screen. We
Yeah.
can have this level of, and there's still it's just presence and focus. And another thing I love here in Germany is there's less of that. When you meet someone, it really is like face to face, no phones. It's an awesome thing because we're all right. We're all gripped by this technology, and it's double edged sword. It's can be awesome creatively, but there's a huge disconnect. But the fact that we can do this is pretty fucking cool. Yeah, and I seek connection, and I actually find in Europe, I find more of a sense of community. Last year I was in southern France, and I was sitting in a courtyard of a restaurant in a little village, and there was probably like 20 tables and different groups and couples and stuff at each table, and people would just chime in. There was no phones anywhere for a start, but people would just chime in, not intrusively to each other's conversations, but they'd like overhear something and they'd like comment, and then someone at that table. I was like, fuck, man, this is an awesome sense of community and like a strong history, and just like a rich community thing. And that's like, I dig it. I sometimes when I go back to Melbourne, it's a lot of assets, you know, and no, I crave that community, and I find it. I find it here in Europe.
I think for me, I'm a first generation. So my dad was an immigrant, and I was raised with Middle Eastern culture. My dad was from Morocco. So I was raised American, but at the same time, I was raised with his culture. So I'm not as bitter as most New Yorkers. I'm actually quite kind, and I try to be a nice person. And I say hello and how are you, and I'm one of those people that like will bake things for friends. That's how I was raised. You make cake and you bring it to friends. It's not a very American thing, but it's a thing as a person that's American. There's a
Yeah,
difference.
right. Mm. Yeah. I get that. No, you have a lightness to you, man. Like it's.
I try.
Don't let the lightness get beaten out of you.
If they make another season of The Lord of the Rings and it's as shitty as the last one, then I'll let you know. It's awful. It was awful.
You're a big fan of the original, obviously.
Oh my god, yes.
Yeah.
But I think the Game of Thrones. I don't know if you've watched it. I think it's called The House of Dragons.
I haven't. No.
Oof, it's good. It's really good. But I don't know. I mean, like for yourself, because I mean, you were raised Australian, but like for your own self, I mean, how do you feel in regards to like, do you feel German or do you feel Australian?
Great question, man. I'm in limbo land, right? I'll never be German. I'll never. But it's funny once you're in a place long enough, certain things. I'll never be German enough to be German, is what I'm saying. But as much as they've embraced me, but I've been away from home so long that I'm like, the Aussie things kind of. So I'm right in the middle, but I believe that like taking the best from both cultures is actually an awesome way when you've got two cultures that are so polar opposite. When you find a middle between the two, it's classic. But I've always said like when you leave the place you were raised, and then things happen and you end up with an international family and so on. Once you cross that threshold, there's no turning back. So when you go, what I mean by that is when you go home, I'd been in London 2 years. London is, have you been to London? No.
Yeah.
It's a very, very transient place, but I met people from all different cultures through this 2-year experience.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I didn't experience much racism in that time. I didn't witness much racism. I get home to Australia, Christmas barbecue, as we've said, in the 38-degree heat.
Still not Christmas, okay? Still not considering it Christmas.
There's a bloke on the barbecue. Just
God, I love it. This is crazy.
There's a bloke cooking, stereotypically making shrimps on the barbie, right? Like, and this is my first day back or second day, and he's just spruiking about how like Asians shouldn't be school teachers if their English isn't. And I was like, Jesus Christ! I was like, I've just been in one of like a mega city, and I've met every culture under the sun, and I've experienced very little racism. And I come home, and I have to listen to people who basically haven't even left where I'm from with this stuff.
I know. I can relate so well because I work in a call center. Unfortunately, I work for corporate America. It's the only way that I can make money. But I get these people on the phone that are like, oh, these people are from the Philippines and I don't understand them, yada, yada. And I'm like, I've been around people that are from the Philippines. And I will tell you this, if you've been to any places in Asia, they probably will speak as good as English than people in Singapore. Okay?
Absolutely.
It's one thing Filipinos are known for. They speak English very well.
Yeah.
So hilarious.
But going back to the Aussie German thing, I'm now somewhere in the middle, and I of course I have German family, so it's now in my family bloodlines and stuff. This is the international life, but it's really hard, and I think a lot of people find this who have left the countries they grew up in. There's a thing that you can't really explain when you go home. The stuff that frustrates you when you go home. It's a really hard thing to kind of explain when you see things done differently. And I see a lot of things in Germany that are done better, and there's some things from Australia that I would like to see more of here. So it's really like take the best of both.
Yeah. Balancing them out.
Yeah. Nowhere's perfect, right?
No.
That's crazy because
Hmm?
Sorry, my fiance, like, I'm often getting quite down on Germany, but I'm finding myself like on this show being quite like backing Germany. So it's a real, like, I swing and stuff, you know. It's a
Australia is like one of those places where I think you have to experience it. Like, actually, I've never been there. It's too expensive to go. I'm sorry. It's
it is.
very expensive to go there.
It is. It is.
And
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 and far.
oh my god, I heard it's like I think it's a 23-hour flight from Florida. It's crazy.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing that.
Fair enough.
But it doesn't disregard though. I think Australia has great culture. I mean, in regards to like filmmaking and photography, but I think Germany also has at the same time. But I think something for you yourself is where you've been able to grow as an artist in Germany. So maybe that would be your strength.
It's spot on, and that's like it's really high up for me. Like, if I'm not, like, I'm primarily here as a father, right? But to be the best father for my son, I have to be creatively. I have to try and find creative fulfillment, because that makes me the best father that I can be.
Yeah,
If
the
I'm in a
most
place
loving.
where, yeah, if I'm in a place where I'm where I just don't feel I can express my creative voice, my well-being suffers, and that doesn't make me the best the best father that I can be. So you're spot on. Like, my growth as an artist here has been really. I think I'm very determined and driven. I still would have, like, pursued wherever I was, and I don't know what would have happened in other countries, London or England or Australia. But you, you're exactly right. Here I've had that growth artistically, and that's been a major thing for me.
It's really awesome to be able to like find your artistic place. And I think being a person that's also a father and you have to have that responsibility, like it's your child that you have to care for. The thing that kind of gets forgotten is yes, you got to work, but if you have to work and you're miserable, how do you think your kids are going to feel when you come home?
Exactly, man. I have to set an example to my son, and at least if he sees me trying and failing, that's better than him seeing me miserable, as you've just said. So if he sees me taking swings, that's way cooler than me coming home choked by a tie and being a miserable father. So exactly right. I fucking worked in a call center once too, man. I lasted 6 days, I think, before it was just.
Been there for over a year.
I I understand. I understand. And my situation was particularly bad. Like, it was in debt collection. It was horrendous. Um, but yeah,
That's bad. That's
I've done
very,
a lot of.
very
It
bad.
was very bad. I've done no training, thrown in the deep end, like 30 people
Ugh.
waiting on the line, chasing people for like $1,000 bill mobile phone bill that they'd racked up in like 2 weeks. And I just didn't care. I didn't care. I was like, dude, I understand if you can't pay this. Like, I'm just like, but I've
Hey,
had a lot of crazy shitty jobs too. So
it's not a pretty road to become a successful artist. It's a very dirty, dirty road.
it is. It is. I still tussle with it, man. I still tussle with it. It's yeah, but finding that balance, I said to you earlier, like, I think I've found a good balance here. Being the starving artist isn't necessarily the best way to make art, I think, and I've found a good balance here.
It's also that stereotype. It's that derived and mealed and chewed up concept over and over again. It's You want to be an artist, be an artist. Like, I love podcasting. Do I care about being as big, like, the biggest podcast? Well, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. All I care about is making this my career and being successful at it so I can be able to provide for myself. The same way as I'm assuming as a filmmaker and as a writer, when you need to be able to provide for yourself and creatively do it at the same time. When you get to that step in your life,
Happy days. Happy
yeah.
days, man.
What do you need
Yeah,
paparazzi following you around? You want that? Come on.
no, just to sustain, be able to do it. And yeah, I received some funding here, some research funding a couple of years ago, and it's just a dream come true to have the time to like research and to know that was what I had presented was being considered and backed. It was just fucking happy days, man. It was like to be able to do this and
it's acknowledgement. It's being acknowledged for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, that's the dream. Just to be able to keep doing it and try and have it resonate with people. These conversations are just these long form open conversations. They're awesome.
They allow people to really, again, like open up, learn from one another. And the thing is, when you shorten people's way of communication to a 5-minute or a 10-minute segment, you really limit it. Sorry.
That's all good, man. Yeah.
You limit the way that we can communicate openly. You're not pressured in any way, shape, or form. I think it's really incredible what you're doing, and I think it's really incredible the experience that you had, because it's really a genuine approach to, well, I'm in another country. What am I supposed to do? Well, make yourself the opportunities. You're here now. You have to be here because in your case, you had a child. There are other scenarios that you can run into. Make the situation that you're in the most practical, the most reasonable for you right now, and grow from there. I think it's also unrealistic expectations. I think that's the biggest key is don't go big. Go little.
It's a fair point. Little steps, little bite-sized pieces that you could manage bit by bit. Just taking a little step in that direction, again, like intuitively, like just lean a little bit towards that thing and just take the manageable pieces of that, like write a word, write a sentence, write a paragraph. You know what I mean? It always sounds so like art can get really, really kind of big and exponential and kind of hazy, but it's like when you actually, maybe being in Germany has made me a little bit more practical as well, in terms of like, okay, if this is something you want to create, realistically, how are you going to do that? Like, break it down and break it down more and break it down. I've had a lot of really cool discussion with our other artists here about, all right, what do you want to, what's your vision? And then just really being honest about that and like, okay, how are you going to make that happen, and just break it down and down and down.
Yeah. It's all about being able to realize that the bigger picture is made out of smaller pieces. It's really, again, goes back to perspective. It really is just very hard. I'm talking about, like, even for myself, like, it's really hard to break out of patterns. And, when you're faced with that, living in a different place, you have to create a new pattern, a new way of communicating, because English and German, I don't think is the same language. If I'm not mistaken.
But yeah, what you say, yeah, also like when you take a dramatic left turn like I did, which was kind of leave Australia. I mean, a lot of people relocate countries, but you're right. When you step into that whole other world, it gives you an opportunity to like reset in a way and like try and shape things. I mean, you could do that anywhere. You don't have to leave your home base. You can make that choice like whenever you like. But for me, it helped me when I physically stepped out of everything that I ever knew. It helped me start to like lean toward shaping that, you know, that creative trajectory particularly, but also like personally.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy because when you hear about a move from Australia to Germany, you think, okay, that's simple. But then after listening for an entire hour about the experience over 10 years, 10 plus years, you're like, whoa, oh my God, wow. Okay. Yeah.
That ain't the half of it, you know. Another thing is like when you arrive in a foreign country and there's no English and you're like in your 30s and you can't even order a loaf of bread, you're sort of like, Jesus Christ, I'm too old for this. Like it. But then you got to make a choice. You're like, okay. For me, for me it was never a choice not to be in my son's life, and it was a bonus that he's in a city that I love. You know, if he was born in a city that I wasn't particularly keen on, it would have been much more difficult. But just to go to it's very humbling to be in a situation where you think you know how to navigate most things, and all of a sudden you can't even like do basic shopping, let alone get medicine when your boy's sick because he can't read the stuff at the chemist.
It's awful.
There's endless, but this you know, it could either beat you or it makes you grow. And in my case, it's like give it daily failure here, particularly with the language, because still not a day goes fucking by where I don't like balls something up out there and try and I just mess. People hear my accent, their heads spin, their eyes like they just can't make out why is this Aussie guy speaking like bad German. But this daily failure with the language, it's like bombing, right? It's like public bombing every day. But I've learned to embrace it. Like I just embrace it now, and I don't curl up in a ball. It gives me great strength of character, and that's what I find it hard to describe to people and stuff. It's like just bomb daily at the grocery store. It's the best advice I can give. It's just bomb daily and embrace the public bombing.
It's just another, I feel like it's just like another level of experience and something that I personally have never gone through, but honestly, my heart goes out to you, man, because if like I had to deal with that, like, bro, English is hard enough. And I'm like, what did that say? Huh? Oh, wait, that was 6? I thought that was 8. Yeah, no, not happening.
Yeah, I was on a set and one of the lead like cop guys, he pulled me aside and it was very quiet. It was very, very quiet. And he said to me in German, "Wo kommst du her? Where are you from?" And I was like, okay, I'm going to really slow my words. And I said, "Ich komme aus Australien." Right. I said it clearly and slowly. And he looked at me and he's like, "What? Köln?" As in Cologne. And I was like, if this guy thinks I'm saying Cologne when I'm saying Australia, I got no fucking chance in this land. He was probably drunk. You know, a lot of these old actors on detective shows, they're you know, he was probably.
Oh my God. It's just okay. This just reminds me of like when Americans mispronounce, because this is what Americans do. We mispronounce anything that's in German is mispronounced in the United States. Everything. You know, I say Adidas. They're like, what the fuck is that? I'm like, Adidas. And they're like,
I like that. I like that you do that, man. I like that you stay true to the brand.
yeah, it's, you know, they're like, oh, it's Volkswagen. No, it's Volkswagen. No, it's Volks, right? Volkswagen. Yeah, Volkswagen.
Yeah, the W is a V.
And it's just like, again, it's just so hilarious because when Germans come here, they get to see Americans butcher the crap out of their culture. Everywhere. Oh, it is the reality, though.
Another little classic on another set of all places was there was a big crowd of people, and a random dude came up to me, and he's like, "You're Australian, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Do you know Greg?"
Excuse me? I know Greg.
Yeah. So I was a bit stunned, and then I was like, "You talking about Greg from uni, or Greg who runs the fish and chips store, or Greg, my, bright, like, which Greg you talking about?" And he's like, "Oh, I thought you'd know," And I'm like, "Dude, population of Australia is 26 million people, man. Like, that's a whole lot of Gregs, Do you know Greg?
I know Greg. You know Greg? Oh god. No, it's so funny because I run into this problem, especially at work. I've worked in 2 different jobs in the past 6 years, and I'm the only person named Dave. Out of, like, the last job was like 30 employees, and this one's over 100. Over 100. And I'm the only person named Dave. So I view it as a sign from the universe that they know that I don't belong there. Like, what more of a sign do you need? Is like all of your employees have different names except one. One is named one name,
Classic.
Oh, yes, it is.
So own the uniqueness.
Oof. Let me ask you this. With the work that you're doing and the projects that you've been on, where can people find, like, the work that you're doing? Like, are you posting the shit on, like, YouTube? And
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've just set up my YouTube channel recently, actually, and put everything on there.
Okay. I'm going to feature your I think I can feature your channel, so I'm going to find you on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, likewise. The username is Super Dan Thomas because I have my little, without sounding like ego-ish, I have a little podcast as well, Super Little Challenges. But yeah, my YouTube channel has like all my, like the Volkswagen ads on there, the shorts are on there, little
you
scenes.
You did a GTI. Okay, let's not humble this. Okay, this man did a Volkswagen GTI commercial. Okay, do you know how many people in Austria probably wetted their pants watching that video?
I don't know about that.
Rally racing, bro. That's what GTIs are famous for.
Yeah,
it's rally races.
It was actually more of a general Volkswagen ad, but that's cool. I appreciate that. But yeah, it's
no rally racing with the donuts.
No rally racing. but all the shorts, like my shorts are on there. A lot of scenes, behind the scenes stuff, interview stuff. So I'm really, trying to just be awesome for people. And also the little doco I made about my drum teacher was my first crack at making something, and I still get responses from people saying, how much they loved it, and sort of it inspired them to get back on the drums or things like that. So there's a YouTube channel. My website's danthomas.net. That's got a lot of stuff on there as well. And all my social media is Mr. Dan Thomas. That's the usernames.
Super spiffy.
I think I've changed my username 400 fucking times. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, so I have to tell you this funny story. So we're not the only person that's named Lost in the Groove.
I looked at, actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a record store in Washington. So Carissa, which is the host of American Groove, it's all about stoner culture. We were talking one day, and she's like, what are we going to do about these people? I said, look. I said, when we have enough money, I said, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go out there in Washington, rent like a yacht Cadillac, get on like a nice pair of tuxedos, walk up to those motherfuckers and knock on their door and be like, listen, bitches, okay? We're the Lost in the Groove podcast. Your ass is owned by my ass now. We're buying this shit. Okay, get out.
And I love it, man. And they won't know how to. They'll be like, "What the?"
They might respond to this, but all love, like no all seriousness. We're just kidding around. I'm not being serious at all right now. I'm joking.
Classic.
Yes.
But can I just say, Dave, it's really awesome what you're doing, man. Like, yeah, it's awesome to have these freeform conversations that connect like this on opposite sides of the globe.
Yeah,
just, like,
literally.
Yeah,
different time
seriously.
zones.
Yeah, and like we've said, it's actually people might not realize like there's a lot of work that goes into podcasting. Like there's a bit of work in it. It's like those pieces again, you know. So I'm good on you for just being consistent with it and like doing it.
Thank you for that, and it's my pleasure to have you on and hear about your experiences all the way over in Germany. And honestly, like, seriously, check out his work and short films. I would love to see that one with the drum. This is very exciting. And if you want to check out more of Lost in the Groove, we are on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Lost in the Groove Pod. So with that, stay groovy, my friends, and we'll catch you on the next one.